What would you do if you bought an old truck for just 50 cents and discovered that inside it hides a secret capable of changing your life forever? Before I tell you how I found it, subscribe right now and stay until the end, because what I'm about to reveal is not something you'll hear every day. The smell of dampness and burnt oil hit me the moment I opened the door of the old truck. I never thought a vehicle like that would end up in my hands. I wasn't a trucker, nor a transport business owner. I could barely afford to pay rent with my job as a delivery worker for a small courier company in the city. My life was simple: motorbike in the mornings, packages on my back, and endless streets to cover. But that morning everything changed. The company where I worked announced that it would auction off some of its old vehicles. Among them was that battered truck, rusted, with more scars than a retired boxer. Nobody wanted it, not even for scrap. I had no intention of buying it either, until I heard the magic words, "It goes for whatever price, as long as it's taken out of the yard." I don't know what made me raise my hand and say, 50 cents. Some laughed. Others looked at me as if I were crazy. But in the end, with the dry thud of the manager's improvised gavel, that piece of rusted iron became mine. That night, as I looked at it parked on the curb in front of my house, I felt a mix of shame and pride. My neighbors whispered from their windows, "What does she think she's going to do with that wreck?" they said. I didn't even know the answer myself. I only knew that something inside me told me not to let it rot away into oblivion. The following days were a battle against grime, rust, and my own doubts. With old gloves and a wire brush, I began to clean every corner of the truck. It was like waking a sleeping giant. Even so, there was something strange. Every time I sat in the cab, I felt a strange pressure, as if someone else were there, watching me from the shadows. It was during one of those cleanings that I discovered it. Under the driver's seat there was an almost invisible lever, hidden between the torn upholstery and the corroded metal. I pulled it without thinking too much. The seat lifted slowly, revealing a secret compartment that nobody seemed to have noticed for years. Inside was a metal box covered in dust and rust stains. It was heavier than it looked. With trembling hands, I dragged it to the floor and opened it. What I saw inside made me hold my breath and recoil as if I had touched fire. They weren't tools. They weren't spare parts. It was something that could cost me my freedom, or even my life. Inside the box were bundles of bills wrapped in black plastic. Not just a few, dozens, maybe hundreds of packages, stacked neatly, as if someone had carefully hidden them away. The smell of old paper and dampness clung to my hands. My first thought was fatal: drugs. My heart raced so hard I had to sit down on the cab floor to avoid fainting. With a lump in my throat, I tore open one of the packages with my nails. It wasn't white powder. It was bills. Bills of 500s, 200s, even dollars. Money that couldn't be easily explained. I slammed it shut, put it back in the box, and lowered the seat as if nothing had happened. I stayed motionless, listening to the sounds of the street through the dusty windshield. Children playing, a dog barking, the tamale vendor announcing himself with his speaker. Everything outside was the same, but inside the truck my world had changed forever. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the box, the bills, and a question burning in my head. Whose money was that? The next day, I decided to take the truck to the trusted workshop of an old mechanic, Don Lalo, who had always fixed my motorbikes when I barely had enough to pay him. "This heap should already be in a junkyard," he said as he lifted the seat to check the rusted base. And that's when the inevitable happened. His hand brushed against the hidden lever. The seat lifted just a few centimeters, and the box was exposed. Don Lalo froze. So did I. The air grew dense, as if time had stopped running. "And this?" he asked in a broken voice, his gaze fixed on the metal box. "Don't open it," I said quickly, more a plea than an order. But it was too late. With a grunt, he lifted the lid. The silence of the workshop shattered with a strangled cry that echoed against all the sheet metal walls. What he saw left him pale, as if he had found a corpse. "Girl," he muttered, swallowing hard. "Do you know what this means?" I shook my head, though deep down I already knew. Trouble. Don Lalo slammed the box shut and looked me in the eyes with a seriousness I had never seen in him. "You have to get this truck out of here. Now. He gave me no explanations, nor did he let me ask questions. He simply turned off the workshop lights, locked the padlock, and walked me to the door. Before letting me go, he whispered in my ear, "That money isn't lost. Someone is looking for it." And in that moment, I understood my life would never be the same again. I left the workshop with trembling legs. I could barely hold the steering wheel of the truck as I drove it back home. Every corner seemed dangerous, every shadow suspicious, as if suddenly the whole city were on the lookout. That night, I parked the truck a few streets away from my house. I didn't want my neighbors to connect it to me, much less for anyone to track me down. I walked back to my apartment, looking over my shoulder every few steps, convinced someone was following me. I didn't sleep at all. Every noise made me jump. The creak of a door, a car starting on the street, even a dog barking. And then I heard it, footsteps on the rooftop. I ran to the window, but saw no one. Only the flickering city lights and the echo of an uncomfortable silence. I closed the curtains abruptly and hugged myself, praying it was only my imagination. At dawn, I decided to go back to the truck. I had to make sure the box was still there. I walked to the street where I had left it and froze. There were shoe prints in the damp dirt, right around the vehicle. I got into the cab with my heart in my throat. The seat was shifted, the lever half raised. I opened the compartment. The box was still there, but someone had opened it. Nothing was missing, but inside there was something new, a photograph. It was an old black and white photo, worn at the edges. It showed an older man with a hat, standing in front of the same truck that was now mine. On the back, written in shaky handwriting, was a phrase that chilled my blood. "What is mine will return to me." I felt short of breath. I slammed the box shut and stayed motionless, listening to the furious pounding of my heart. Someone knew I had found the hiding place. Someone was playing with me. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. It was an unknown number. I answered with a trembling voice. "Enjoying your new toy?" said a hoarse voice, distorted by a scrambler. I was speechless. "Listen carefully," the voice continued. "That truck isn't yours, and what it holds, even less. Don't get involved in what you don't understand, or you'll regret it." The call ended. I was left paralyzed, the phone in my hand. Outside, the noise of an approaching motorbike broke the silence. A black motorcycle slowly passed in front of the truck, its rider hidden under a dark helmet. He didn't stop. He didn't speak. But his presence alone told me what I needed to know. I was being watched. I couldn't just stand by. Fear was one thing, but uncertainty was worse. If I wanted to survive, I needed answers. I put the photograph in the inside pocket of my jacket and drove the truck to the municipal library. I knew it wasn't the best place for serious research, but on the internet everything could be traced, and I didn't want my searches recorded at home. I turned on one of the old public area computers and looked carefully at the photo. The man with the hat looked about 60, with a hard gaze, and in the background you could just make out a workshop with a barely visible sign, "Martinez Service." I searched the name in digital archives and old scanned newspapers. What I found gave me goosebumps. That workshop had closed 20 years ago, after its owner, a certain Ernesto Martinez, was found dead under suspicious circumstances, inside a truck. The same model I was now driving. I put my hand over my mouth, holding back a scream. It wasn't a coincidence. The truck had a dark past, and I was trapped in it. Suddenly, I felt a sting on the back of my neck. Someone was watching me. I turned slowly and saw a man sitting a few tables away. He pretended to read a newspaper, but his eyes, hidden behind dark glasses, were fixed on me. I stood up immediately, shut down the computer, and walked out to the street. I walked fast, almost running, and reached the truck. When I started it, I looked in the rearview mirror. The man with the newspaper was standing at the library door, staring at me without moving. The following days were a nightmare. The black motorcycle kept reappearing at any time, following me from a distance. A dark van parked in front of my building at night, always with the lights off. The phone rang at odd hours, and when I answered, I only heard heavy breathing on the other end. I couldn't tell any of my delivery co-workers, not even my best friend, because I knew I would put them in danger. The secret had to stay between me, the truck, and that cursed box. One early morning, unable to take it anymore, I decided to check the documents hidden beneath the bills again. Among them, I found something new, a thin notebook bound in cracked leather. I opened it carefully, and my hands began to sweat. They were notes, names, dates, routes, and on several pages, maps marked with symbols I didn't understand. But the most disturbing part was a phrase repeated several times, almost like an obsession written in firm handwriting. Hope never dies. That had to be the code name. An operation, an organization, something much bigger than just an abandoned truck. And then I understood, the man in the photo, Ernesto, hadn't died naturally. He had been silenced. And now, someone wanted to recover what he had left hidden. I put my hands on my face, trembling. What I had found wasn't just some lost stash. It was the key to a secret many people were willing to kill to protect. And now, I was the owner of that key. The next morning, when I left my building to go to work, the truck was no longer where I had left it. I felt a void in my stomach, a vertigo that almost made me collapse to my knees. I ran several blocks until I saw it parked on a corner, halfway down the street. Someone had moved it. And worse, the passenger door was ajar. I approached cautiously, looking around. The interior was ransacked. The seat torn out, the glove compartment empty, and the secret compartment open. The box was still there, but part of the money was missing. Inside was another note, written in the same shaky handwriting as the one on the photograph. You're playing on ground you don't understand. Next time, it won't just be money that's missing. The message was clear. They were warning me. Either I backed off, or they would destroy me. That night, while I tried to sleep, I heard the sound of an engine idling outside my window. I peeked out cautiously, a black van, tinted windows, engine running. Nobody got out. Nobody honked. They just waited, like predators measuring their prey's fear. I sat on the bed hugging my knees, tears in my eyes. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? Officer, I found millions of pesos hidden in a truck I bought for 50 cents, and now I'm being watched. They would lock me up before they ever touched them. The next morning, I decided I needed definitive answers. I went back over the notebook calmly, analyzing the names and dates. Some sounded vaguely familiar. Neighbors from my neighborhood, clients of the courier company where I worked, even a couple of surnames from well-known businessmen in the city. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just a notebook, it was a network. A network of powerful people, shady businesses, illegal routes crossing borders. And the truck I was now driving was just another piece in that dark chess game. I went out into the street with the notebook under my arm, determined to find someone who could explain what I had discovered. That's when I heard the roar of a motorcycle behind me. I turned just in time to see the black motorcycle speeding toward me. The rider, in a dark helmet, extended an arm. A metallic object gleamed under the sun. I threw myself to the ground just as a gunshot tore through the air. The blast echoed across the street. The bullet struck the brick wall just inches from my head. The motorcyclist didn't stop. He whizzed past and disappeared onto the avenue. People started screaming, some ran, others pulled out their phones to record. I lay on the pavement, heart racing, realizing this was no longer about warnings. They wanted to kill me. That same night, I packed a suitcase with the little I could carry. Clothes, documents, a couple of family photos, and of course, the notebook and the photograph of the man in the hat. I couldn't take the money. It was too risky, but I couldn't leave the truck behind either. I drove quickly to the bus terminal. My plan was simple: abandon the vehicle in a distant parking lot, get on a passenger bus, and disappear from the city. A new life somewhere else, far away from all this. But simple plans rarely work. While I waited in line to buy a ticket, I noticed two men in suits at the entrance. They didn't look like travelers. No suitcases, not even backpacks. They just watched, alert, like hawks hunting prey. One of them pulled a photo from his pocket and discreetly showed it to a security guard. My stomach twisted. I recognized that image from afar. It was me. I stepped back, trying to blend into the crowd, and slipped out through another door before they could see me. I walked quickly, breathing heavily, until I reached the truck again. I had no other choice. I had to trust the steel monster that had gotten me into this mess. I started the engine and drove aimlessly, taking side streets, deliberately getting lost to avoid being followed. Finally, after an hour, I reached the highway out of the city. I felt a momentary relief, as if I had left my pursuers behind. But the relief didn't last long. In the rearview mirror, far off, I saw the lights of two vehicles keeping the same speed as me. A gray truck and a black sedan. They weren't overtaking me. They weren't falling back. They were just following me, patiently and meticulously. My throat tightened. I turned up the radio volume to drown out the fear, but the static that came from the speakers made my hair stand on end. It was as if someone had hijacked the signal. And then I heard it. A metallic, distorted voice came through the truck speaker, even though the radio had no antenna or connection at all. You can't escape. The truck is ours. I nearly lost control of the wheel. I turned the volume down abruptly, but the voice was still there, echoing in the cab, as if the vehicle itself were speaking. Return it, or you will disappear like the others. Cold sweat ran down my back. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I tried to accelerate, but the truck was old, heavy, unable to compete with the modern engines chasing me. Suddenly, the lights of the gray truck drew dangerously close to my rear bumper. The sedan pulled ahead and began to cut me off. They were cornering me in the middle of the highway. I thought about slamming the brakes, about jumping out, anything that might let me survive. But before I could decide, the truck did something that froze me. The engine roared with an unknown force, as if a sleeping beast had awakened. The speedometer needle rose higher than I had ever seen on that rusty dashboard. The old truck lunged forward with an impossible roar, breaking free and leaving behind the two vehicles that had tried to trap me. I couldn't believe it. It was as if that hunk of scrap refused to be caught. My hands were sweating so much I could barely hold the wheel. The truck surged like it never had before, as if an invisible force pushed it beyond its limits. I felt the vibrations of the engine reverberate through my bones, like a foreign heartbeat inside my own body. The lights of the pursuing vehicles faded in the rearview mirror until they disappeared completely. But instead of relief, what I felt was an even greater fear. The speedometer showed an impossible speed for such an old truck. It couldn't be real. What are you? I whispered in a broken voice, not expecting an answer. And then, I heard it. Not through the radio, not from outside. The voice thundered inside the cab, deep, harsh, like a metallic echo coming from everywhere at once. I am Hope. The same name that was repeated again and again in the notebook. My skin bristled from head to toe. Hope? I stammered. I am not yours, nor theirs, the voice whispered. I was created to carry a destiny. And now, that destiny is yours. I froze, unable to move. The steering wheel turned almost on its own, correcting the curves of the road as if the truck knew the way better than I did. The dead dashboard lights suddenly flickered. The broken indicators lit up one by one, like eyes awakening from a long sleep. The rearview mirror fogged up. Through the mist, a figure appeared for an instant, an older man, wearing a hat, the same one from the photograph. He was sitting in the passenger seat, motionless, watching me with a disturbing calm. I screamed and looked away, but when I looked back, there was no one. Only the empty seat. The truck began to slow down by itself, until it stopped on a deserted stretch of highway. The engine shut off with a deep sigh, like an animal finishing a run. I was breathing heavily, still gripping the wheel. The silence was absolute. Then, without me touching it, the glove compartment opened on its own. Inside was a manila envelope that hadn't been there before. I took it with trembling hands. Inside was a yellowed sheet of paper, handwritten. Whoever drives hope will also drive the souls that were left behind. You are not alone. You never will be. The paper smelled of old tobacco and dried sweat. The handwriting was identical to that in the notebook. I stared at the envelope, unable to move, when suddenly the windshield fogged up from the inside, and with invisible strokes someone wrote on the glass. "Trust me." The air in the cab grew dense, heavy, filled with something not human. I understood that this truck wasn't just a vehicle. It was a guardian, a rolling tomb, a bridge between the living and the dead. And now I had been chosen to drive it. I stayed silent, still clutching the wheel, trying to comprehend the impossible. The air inside the cab remained heavy, as if I were breathing invisible smoke. Suddenly, the dashboard flickered again and all the deadlights turned on at once. A buzzing filled the space and the broken radio began to emit static. Between the crackling of the signal, a muffled voice emerged, like a distant memory. "Don't leave them behind." The windshield fogged up completely, and then I saw it. It wasn't on the road. It wasn't in the present. In front of me unfolded an image, a memory projected like a film on the misted glass. It was night. The truck moved along a dirt road. In the back were people, men, women, children, all crammed together, fear etched in their eyes. Some cried, others prayed in silence. At the wheel was Ernesto, the man in the hat, his face serious and weary. I heard his voice, clear, as if he were sitting next to me. "Hold on, we're almost there. Nobody gets left behind as long as I have strength." The vision faded as quickly as it had appeared. I found myself alone again in the middle of the highway, tears in my eyes. Now I understood. Ernesto wasn't a criminal like everyone said. Yes, he transported people, but he wasn't just any coyote. The documents in the box weren't from anonymous clients. They were from desperate families, searching for a better life. The truck vibrated, as if confirming my thoughts. The engine started up again on its own, with a deep roar that ran down my spine. "Why are you showing me this?" I whispered in a broken voice. The windshield fogged up again, and a new phrase appeared, written in invisible strokes. "Because now you will carry what I could not." The ground trembled beneath the tires. I felt that something enormous was about to begin. The notebook, the money, the photograph, it all fit together. Ernesto had left his mission unfinished. And the truck, somehow, had decided I was the one who had to complete it. But just as I was beginning to accept that destiny, the lights of a vehicle turned on behind me, flooding the cab. A black van stopped a few meters away. Two hooded men got out. One of them shouted in a firm voice, "Get out of the truck right now and hand over what you found." The truck vibrated beneath me, as if growling. The dashboard lights flared brightly, and the engine roared again, impatient. I understood I wasn't alone. It wasn't going to let them drag me out so easily. The old truck was ready to defend me. The hooded men walked toward me with firm steps. One of them held a metal bat. The other clearly had a firearm hidden under his jacket. Fear paralyzed me for an instant, but before I could react, the truck roared with fury. The engine ignited on its own, the headlights lit up like burning eyes, and the horn bellowed a deafening roar that echoed down the deserted highway. The hooded men froze, startled. Suddenly, the steering wheel turned by itself, and the truck moved forward a couple of meters toward them. Not fast, but with a clear intent to intimidate. The air inside the cab filled with electricity, as if thousands of voices whispered all at once, speaking to me in a language I couldn't understand but could feel on my skin. "She's possessed!" one of the men shouted, stepping back. The other raised his gun and fired. The blast made me flinch, but the windshield didn't shatter. The bullet ricocheted off the glass as if it had struck solid steel. The truck responded with a brutal roar. It suddenly accelerated, charging at them like a furious bull. The men ran toward the black van, trying to escape, but the old vehicle, impossible to control, moved with an agility that made no sense for its weight and age. I saw how one of the front tires turned violently, slamming into the van and flipping it onto its side with a crash of twisted metal. The hooded men staggered out, terrified, and disappeared into the bushes at the side of the road. The truck came to an abrupt stop, breathing through the engine like an animal satisfied after a hunt. I was in shock, my hands in the air as if they no longer belonged to me. I felt sweat running down my forehead and tears welling in my eyes. "What are you really?" I asked in a faint voice. The dashboard flickered, and on the speedometer appeared an impossible word, formed by the needles spinning on their own. "Guardian." I covered my mouth with my hands, trembling. I understood then that the truck didn't just carry a past, it carried a purpose. And now that purpose had chosen me. Silence returned, interrupted only by the sound of the overturned van's metal cooling. The road was empty, but I knew it wasn't over. If those men had found me, others would come. The truck had fought for me. But it was also dragging me toward a destiny I could no longer avoid. From the back of the cab, like an echo that wasn't mine, I heard Ernesto's voice whispering clearly. "Now it is you who must carry hope." The engine shut down slowly, as if it needed to rest after the battle. The road was left in absolute silence. I breathed in short, ragged bursts, my hands still clinging to the wheel, unable to let go. Suddenly, the cab filled again with that electric hum. The dashboard flickered and the broken radio came to life once more. The static turned into a hoarse voice, cracked by the distance of time. "Don't make my mistakes." The windshield clouded over, and a new vision unfolded before me. It wasn't the present road, it was another, from the past. I saw Ernesto at the wheel of the truck, hat pulled low over his brow, jaw clenched tight. In the back, just like in the previous vision, several people traveled, entire families. But this time it wasn't an ordinary route. They were crossing the border in the dark, being chased. In the distance, I saw the lights of black vans closing in fast. Ernesto pounded the steering wheel in desperation. "Hold on. I won't let you fall," he shouted, tears in his eyes. Suddenly, the engine failed. The truck lost power in the middle of the desert. The migrants began to cry, to pray. Ernesto opened the door and pulled out an old pistol, determined to buy them time. "Run!" he shouted to the families. "Follow the northern light. Don't look back." The men from the vans surrounded him. I could see their covered faces, weapons in their hands, and Ernesto's expression. Not fear, but resignation. He fired once, twice, but it was useless. One of the hooded men struck him in the chest with the butt of a rifle. Ernesto fell to his knees, but before the darkness reached him, he looked at the truck as if speaking to it. "Protect them, even if I can't." The vision stopped abruptly. I was back alone on the highway, tears streaming down my cheeks. I was breathless, realizing what had happened. Ernesto hadn't died of a heart attack as the rumors said. He had been murdered. And the truck had kept not only the money, but his vow. The dashboard lit up again, showing an impossible message with the needles. "Choose. Continue or run." The air inside the cab grew thick. I couldn't escape anymore. In my hands I carried not just a secret, but a mission that had transcended death. Suddenly, my phone vibrated in my pocket. An anonymous message appeared on the screen. "We know what you saw. If you don't hand over the box tonight, you won't live to see the sunrise." The truck vibrated beneath me, as if responding to the threat. I felt it was alive, waiting for my decision. And deep inside, Ernesto's voice sounded again, firm, relentless. "Don't run. Finish what I couldn't." I stared at the message on the phone screen, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would shatter my chest. I could delete it, pretend nothing was happening, hand everything over and disappear. But something inside me, perhaps Ernesto's voice, perhaps the truck's roar, kept me from turning back. I gripped the phone with rage and shut it off abruptly. "Fine," I whispered into the darkness of the cab. "If they want the box, let them come for it." The dashboard glowed with a reddish light, as if the truck approved of my decision. The engine roared to life on its own, growling into the night like an animal scenting its prey. I drove toward the direction marked in Ernesto's notebook. There was a route circled in red and a word written in crooked letters, "Sanctuary." I didn't know what it meant, but something told me that there I would find the truth. The road grew lonelier and lonelier. The light poles disappeared, leaving absolute darkness. The truck moved forward as if it knew the way by heart. Suddenly, The high beams lit up an old warehouse in the middle of nowhere. The walls were covered in graffiti, the windows boarded up. Even so, several black vans were parked outside, with armed men guarding the entrance. I swallowed hard. They were waiting for me. The truck stopped on its own a few meters away, the engine vibrating with restrained force. I felt electricity in the air, as if my whole body were connected to it. Then, the broken radio came back to life and a deep voice thundered. "Do not fear. You are not alone." The passenger door opened by itself, slamming against the cold dawn air. For an instant, I felt an invisible presence sit beside me. I couldn't see him, but I knew. Ernesto was there, accompanying me. "We're going to finish what you started, right?" I whispered. The dashboard flickered in response. I took a deep breath, gripped the wheel, and drove toward the warehouse. The guards raised their weapons, aiming at me immediately. One of them shouted, "Get out of the truck or we'll shoot." The engine roared, shaking the entire cab. The horn blared like a war cry. "Then shoot," I said softly, and I accelerated with all my strength. The truck responded like a beast unleashed. The tires screeched, kicking up dust and stones, as it rammed into the parked vans. The impact thundered like a storm. The men began to scream, some firing uselessly at the windshield that remained intact, others running for their lives. The warehouse trembled with the noise. The truck didn't stop. Neither did I. I felt it wasn't me driving it. It was him guiding me, dragging me into the heart of a secret that had waited decades to be revealed. The truck rammed into the rusty gates of the warehouse with a metallic crash. The doors bent as if they were paper and slammed against the interior walls. The roar of the engine echoed like a primal scream, as if thousands of invisible voices were crying out at once. The armed men ran in every direction, firing blindly. Bullets pounded against the body, but none broke through. The old vehicle moved with a supernatural fury, turning on its own, dodging, pushing, knocking down whatever stood in its way. I could barely hold on to the wheel. I wasn't driving it. It was driving me. When it finally screeched to a halt, dust and smoke filled the warehouse. The survivors fled in terror, leaving their weapons behind. In the silence that followed, I heard a creak. Something was moving in the back. I turned off the engine, or rather, the truck shut itself off, and stepped down slowly, my legs trembling. I moved through the rubble until I reached a metal door that had been left ajar. Inside was a small room, lit by a single hanging lamp. The smell of dampness and confinement was suffocating. In the center, on a table, lay several boxes identical to the one I had found under the seat. All of them were open, with documents, photographs, and notebooks scattered everywhere. But that wasn't what made me hold my breath. On the wall were dozens of photographs pinned up, yellowed with age. Faces of men, women, and children. Some smiling, others with fear in their eyes. In every photo, the same truck appeared in the background. The truck that was now mine. I stepped closer, running my fingers over one of the images. It was like an altar. Ernesto had kept every face, every story. It wasn't contraband he had protected. It was memory. It was testimony. Suddenly, the lamp flickered, and a deep voice echoed through the warehouse, enveloping me completely. "They are still here." The boxes began to vibrate. The papers lifted into the air, swirling around me as if caught in an invisible wind. Whispers filled the room. Dozens, hundreds of overlapping voices, all speaking at once, thanking, pleading, crying. I covered my ears, but it was useless. They were inside my head. "What do you want from me?" I screamed, on the verge of collapse. The truck, parked outside, turned on its lights by itself, illuminating the entrance like two beacons staring straight at me. Ernesto's voice rose above all the others. "What I could not. Take them to their destination. Give them peace." My knees buckled. I understood the terrifying truth. The truck didn't just carry bodies. It carried souls. And now those souls were trapped, waiting to be freed. The wall vibrated, and among the papers a map revealed itself, drawn in red ink. A single point was marked forcefully, the Northern Crossing. The air turned icy. I felt an invisible hand on my shoulder, firm, unyielding. "It's your turn," Ernesto's voice whispered. I froze, knowing that if I accepted this mission, there would be no turning back. The map continued to glow on the wall, as if marked by invisible fire. I tore it down with trembling hands and folded it, pressing it against my chest. Outside, the truck was still running, its headlights illuminating the warehouse as if it were calling to me. I knew I could no longer escape. Destiny was written. The Northern Crossing. That's where I had to take the trapped souls. That's where I had to fulfill what Ernesto could not. I climbed back into the cab. The air inside was heavier than ever, charged with an energy not of this world. The dashboard lit up with symbols I had never seen, and for a moment I felt I wasn't alone. Dozens of invisible gazes accompanied me, like hidden passengers. The engine roared with power and I drove onto the highway. The night silence shattered with each strike of the tires against the asphalt. With every passing kilometer, the sensation intensified. I wasn't just carrying an old truck. I was carrying a procession of souls waiting to cross. But the organization wasn't going to let me arrive. As I turned onto a dark stretch of road, the headlights lit up the inevitable. 3 trucks blocked the path, stretched across side to side. Armed men waited behind them, rifles ready, gazes unyielding. A chill ran down my spine. It was an ambush. One of them raised a megaphone. His voice echoed in the cold dawn air. "Get out of the truck. Hand over what you have and maybe you'll get out alive." The truck vibrated with a low roar, like a chained beast about to break free. The dashboard displayed a single word in impossible red letters. "Advance." "No," I murmured in fear. "There are too many." The engine roared louder, as if answering my doubt with fury. The headlights flickered, illuminating the men's faces. I saw fear in their eyes. "Fire!" shouted the man with the megaphone. Bullets rained against the windshield. The sound was deafening, but none broke through. The glass shone like an invisible barrier, as if hundreds of spectral hands were shielding it. Then, without me touching anything, the truck hurled forward. The acceleration slammed me against the seat as the souls screamed inside the cab, a chorus of voices not from this world. The trucks were crushed as if they were made of cardboard. Metal twisted, men screamed and ran, firing in vain. The dashboard's warning lights flashed, and among them I glimpsed a fleeting vision on the windshield. Ernesto at the wheel, guiding the truck with me at his side. I wasn't driving. We were driving it together. We tore through the blockade with an infernal crash. The air filled with dust, smoke, and screams. When we finally left the ambush behind, the truck slowed down on its own. The engine breathed like a weary animal, but satisfied. I trembled, tears in my eyes. I had survived the last attack. The road to the Northern Crossing was open. And I knew, deep within me, that this journey wasn't just about taking the truck to a destination. It was about freeing those still trapped inside it. The road narrowed until it became a dirt path. The map in my hands burned as if it were alive, guiding me through every turn, every curve. The truck roared beneath me, tireless, as if it knew it was reaching its final destination. After hours, the city lights vanished completely. Only the desert's darkness remained, sprinkled with stars that seemed to watch me in silence. Then I saw it, a rusted arch leaning, with barely legible letters that read, "Northern Crossing." The truck stopped on its own, a few meters from the arch. The silence was absolute. No crickets, no wind, no distant engines. Only my rapid breathing and the furious beating of my heart. Suddenly, the cabin lights went out. Everything was in shadows. The dashboard crackled one last time and formed a word in bright red. "Descend." I swallowed hard and opened the door. The air outside was freezing, despite the desert. I walked a few steps and then I heard it, murmurs. Dozens of voices. Hundreds. All speaking at once, surrounding me, passing through my skin like echoes of the wind. I turned toward the truck. The headlights flared on suddenly, projecting a light so intense it illuminated the entire ground. And then it happened. Figures began to descend from the bed. Transparent silhouettes, blurred faces, men, women, children. Some carried weightless suitcases, others walked hand in hand like entire families. They moved silently, advancing toward the rusted arch. I watched with tears in my eyes, trembling. They were the trapped souls. Ernesto had carried them for years, unable to set them free. And now the truck had brought me here to finish what he could not. One by one, the specters crossed under the arch. As they did, their bodies dissolved into flashes of light, leaving behind a sense of peace so profound it brought me to my knees. Among them appeared a figure I recognized immediately, Ernesto. He wore his hat, and his gaze, though weary, was full of pride. "Thank you," he whispered, though his lips never moved. "Hope never dies. It only changes hands." He extended a hand toward me. I tried to take it, but it dissolved into a beam of light that pierced my chest, filling me with warmth and emptiness at the same time. The last of the spirits crossed the arch. Silence returned. The truck turned off its headlights, and the desert was wrapped in darkness. I stood up, my legs weak, and returned to the cab. The dashboard was dead. The engine, silent. For the first time, it looked like an ordinary truck, abandoned, lifeless. I touched it carefully, waiting for a roar, a spark. But nothing came. The notebook in my jacket burned as if it wanted to remind me of something. I opened it, and on the last page appeared a phrase written in fresh ink, though no one had touched that paper. "You are the guardian now." The air froze around me. I understood the truth. Yes, I had freed the souls, yes, I had finished Ernesto's mission. But the bond with the truck had not been broken. It had chosen me, and it would never let me go. Dawn painted the horizon when I decided to return to the city. The truck's engine started again with a muffled roar, tired but unyielding. This time I felt no voices, no presences, only an uneasy silence, as if something waited in the shadows. I drove for hours, trying to convince myself that everything was over, that the souls were at peace, that Ernesto had finally rested. But deep in my chest I knew it wasn't so. When I reached the city, I parked the truck in front of my building. People passed by, some laughed at the rusty wreck, others didn't even notice it. To them it was just an old vehicle. To me, it was a prison on wheels. That night, I lay in bed trying to sleep. I closed my eyes for only a few minutes, and then I heard it, the roar of the engine, soft like a sigh. I opened my eyes abruptly. The truck was off, sitting in the street. Still, the sound echoed inside my head. I got up and looked out the window. The truck's headlights flickered once, as if winking at me. I went back to bed, trembling. I tried to cover myself with a blanket, but the voices returned, whispering through my thoughts. This time they weren't laments or pleas. They were orders, directions, streets, names. The notebook on my nightstand opened on its own, its pages flipping until they stopped on a blank sheet. The pen beside it began to write without anyone touching it. "Pending delivery. You cannot stop." A cold shiver ran down my spine. I put my hands over my face, realizing the inevitable. Ernesto had been the guardian before me. And when he died, the truck chose his replacement. There was no escape. I wasn't just a delivery girl anymore. I was now the driver of a destiny I had never asked for. I stepped to the window and looked at the truck once more. The word hope was marked on the body, barely visible under the rust and grime, but it shone with a strange glow under the moonlight. And then I understood with horror. The souls I had freed had crossed, but the truck was never truly empty. There would always be more. It would always be hungry for new invisible passengers. The roar echoed inside me again. It wasn't an end. It was only the beginning. Days went by. I tried to return to my usual routine, to the deliveries on my motorbike, to the traffic-filled streets and the repetitive sound of the parcel scanner. I pretended everything was normal in front of my coworkers, but deep inside I knew nothing was the same. The truck remained parked in front of my building, rusting under the sun, like a sleeping animal waiting for its master to whistle. No one got too close, and the few who did ended up walking away with furrowed brows, as if some invisible instinct screamed at them to flee. I tried to ignore it. But the bond was stronger than my will. Every night, when I closed my eyes, the roar of the engine returned. And with it, the visions. I saw unknown streets, faces of people I had never met, names written on invisible walls. An endless list of destinations, as if someone were dictating deliveries to me, but not of packages. One early morning I woke drenched in sweat, with the truck keys in my hand. I didn't remember taking them. The clock read 3:33 a.m. The notebook lay open on my table, and on the blank page a fresh ink address had appeared. San Rafael Neighborhood, Alley of Oblivion number 27. Urgent delivery. My breathing quickened. I wanted to throw the notebook out the window, burn it, forget it. But my feet moved on their own. I went down the stairs and found the truck with its headlights on, waiting for me. I climbed into the cab, trembling. The dashboard glowed, and the engine roared without me turning the key. The passenger seat was damp, as if someone invisible had just sat there. "No," I whispered through clenched teeth. "I can't keep doing this." The rear-view mirror fogged up and, like that first time, Ernesto's reflection appeared. His gaze wasn't kind or understanding. It was firm, relentless. "You've already started," his voice said inside my head. "You can't stop." The truck started on its own, pulling me from the street into the darkness of the early morning. I cried at the wheel, realizing the truth. My life no longer belonged to me. Each delivery would be a new secret, a new soul I had to transport. I didn't know if they were alive or dead, if they were innocent or guilty. I only knew the truck would never stop. And neither would I. Hope never dies, but it never forgives either. The dawn was damp and cold when the truck stopped in front of Alley of Oblivion number 27. It was a forgotten area, with abandoned houses and windows boarded up with rotting wood. The silence was so thick that even the stray dogs avoided getting close. The dashboard glowed and a single word appeared, written with impossible needles. Delivery. My breath caught. There was no package, no box, nothing physical to take. Only me, the truck, and that cursed address. I swallowed hard, opened the door, and stepped down. The ground was littered with broken bottles and wet ashes. I knocked on the main door of the marked house, and the hollow sound echoed through the alley. "Hello," I said with a trembling voice. "Is someone here?" At first there was no answer. Then, a creak. A figure moved inside. The door opened slowly, revealing a hunched old man, with sunken eyes and trembling hands. "You're late," he said in a faint voice. I froze. How did he know I was coming? "You were waiting for me?" I stammered. The old man smiled, showing toothless gums. "They all wait for you. You are the new one." I took a step back, but he moved toward me with disturbing calm. His eyes were glassy, but in them burned a strange gleam. "I must go," he whispered, handing me a yellowed envelope he carried in his hands. "My name is already written." Before I could ask him anything, the old man collapsed on the ground, lifeless. I screamed, kneeling at his side, but it was useless. He was already dead. The envelope fell into my hands. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a single sheet, written in the same handwriting as the notebook. "Delivery completed. One more on the road." The air turned icy, and when I looked toward the truck, I saw something impossible. The translucent silhouette of the old man sitting in the bed, silent, waiting alongside the other specters. I put my hands to my face, crying. I understood with horror that each mission wasn't to save someone. It was to collect souls. The truck roared softly, as if satisfied. The dashboard flickered with a new message. "Next address ready." The notebook in my jacket began to burn again. I opened it and on a clean page, another address appeared on its own, in fresh ink. There was no escape. The deliveries would never end. I was no longer just a delivery girl. I was the driver of hope, the messenger of the dead. Weeks passed. Every night, without fail, the notebook wrote new addresses on its own. I obeyed. Not because I wanted to, But because I knew what happened if I tried to resist, the voices became unbearable, the air in the cab unbreathable, and the truck wouldn't start until I accepted the delivery. But that dawn, when I saw the new address written in the notebook, I knew it was different. Central Hospital, Room 213. My heart stopped. That was the hospital where my mother was admitted. I stepped to the window and looked at the truck once more. The word Hope was marked on the body, barely visible under the rust and grime, but it shone with a strange glow under the moonlight. And then I understood with horror. The souls I had freed had crossed, but the truck was never truly empty. There would always be more. It would always be hungry for new invisible passengers. The roar echoed inside me again. It wasn't an end. It was only the beginning. Days went by. I tried to return to my usual routine, to the deliveries on my motorbike, to the traffic-filled streets and the repetitive sound of the parcel scanner. I pretended everything was normal in front of my coworkers, but deep inside I knew nothing was the same. The truck remained parked in front of my building, rusting under the sun, like a sleeping animal waiting for its master to whistle. No one got too close, and the few who did ended up walking away with furrowed brows, as if some invisible instinct screamed at them to flee. I tried to ignore it, but the bond was stronger than my will. Every night, when I closed my eyes, the roar of the engine returned. And with it, the visions. I saw unknown streets, faces of people I had never met, names written on invisible walls. An endless list of destinations, as if someone were dictating deliveries to me, but not of packages. One early morning I woke drenched in sweat, with the truck keys in my hand. I didn't remember taking them. The clock read 3:33 a.m. The notebook lay open on my table, and on the blank page a fresh ink address had appeared. San Rafael Neighborhood, Alley of Oblivion number 27. Urgent delivery. My breathing quickened. I wanted to throw the notebook out the window, burn it, forget it. But my feet moved on their own. I went down the stairs and found the truck with its headlights on, waiting for me. I climbed into the cab, trembling. The dashboard glowed, and the engine roared without me turning the key. The passenger seat was damp, as if someone invisible had just sat there. "No," I whispered through clenched teeth. "I can't keep doing this." The rear-view mirror fogged up and, like that first time, Ernesto's reflection appeared. His gaze wasn't kind or understanding. It was firm, relentless. "You've already started," his voice said inside my head. "You can't stop." The truck started on its own, pulling me from the street into the darkness of the early morning. I cried at the wheel, realizing the truth. My life no longer belonged to me. Each delivery would be a new secret, a new soul I had to transport. I didn't know if they were alive or dead, if they were innocent or guilty. I only knew the truck would never stop. And neither would I. Hope never dies, but it never forgives either. The dawn was damp and cold when the truck stopped in front of Alley of Oblivion number 27. It was a forgotten area, with abandoned houses and windows boarded up with rotting wood. The silence was so thick that even the stray dogs avoided getting close. The dashboard glowed and a single word appeared, written with impossible needles. Delivery. My breath caught. There was no package, no box, nothing physical to take. Only me, the truck, and that cursed address. I swallowed hard, opened the door, and stepped down. The ground was littered with broken bottles and wet ashes. I knocked on the main door of the marked house, and the hollow sound echoed through the alley. "Hello," I said with a trembling voice. "Is someone here?" At first there was no answer. Then, a creak. A figure moved inside. The door opened slowly, revealing a hunched old man, with sunken eyes and trembling hands. "You're late," he said in a faint voice. I froze. How did he know I was coming? "You were waiting for me?" I stammered. The old man smiled, showing toothless gums. "They all wait for you. You are the new one." I took a step back, but he moved toward me with disturbing calm. His eyes were glassy, but in them burned a strange gleam. "I must go," he whispered, handing me a yellowed envelope he carried in his hands. "My name is already written." Before I could ask him anything, the old man collapsed on the ground, lifeless. I screamed, kneeling at his side, but it was useless. He was already dead. The envelope fell into my hands. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a single sheet, written in the same handwriting as the notebook. Delivery completed. One more on the road. The air turned icy, and when I looked toward the truck, I saw something impossible. The translucent silhouette of the old man sitting in the bed, silent, waiting alongside the other specters. I put my hands to my face, crying. I understood with horror that each mission wasn't to save someone. It was to collect souls. The truck roared softly, as if satisfied. The dashboard flickered with a new message. Next address ready. The notebook in my jacket began to burn again. I opened it and on a clean page, another address appeared on its own, in fresh ink. There was no escape. The deliveries would never end. I was no longer just a delivery girl. I was the driver of hope, the messenger of the dead. Weeks passed. Every night, without fail, the notebook wrote new addresses on its own. I obeyed. Not because I wanted to, but because I knew what happened if I tried to resist. The voices became unbearable, the air in the cab unbreathable, and the truck wouldn't start until I accepted the delivery. But that dawn, when I saw the new address written in the notebook, I knew it was different. Central Hospital, Room 213. My heart stopped. That was the hospital where my mother was admitted. The truck roared, impatient, as if urging me to leave immediately. But I couldn't accept it. I couldn't allow it to force me to take away the person I loved most. I slammed my fists against the wheel with all my strength. I won't do it. Do you hear me? I'm not going to do it. The dashboard went completely dark. The cab fell into silence. For a moment, I thought I had managed to break the cycle. But then, the windshield slowly fogged up. And there, in invisible letters, a new message appeared written from within. You don't choose. I choose. The dashboard lights flared with a blinding red glow. The engine roared on its own, and the wheel jerked violently. The truck began to move by itself, accelerating beyond my control. No. Stop. I screamed, yanking the handbrake, but it was useless. The city blurred around me. Streets, traffic lights, buildings, until I recognized the hospital's facade rushing toward me. The truck braked sharply in front of the entrance. The engine shut off, leaving a dense silence. The dashboard displayed one final word. Final delivery. With trembling hands, I got out and ran to room 213. I burst the door open and saw her. My mother, asleep, breathing weakly, surrounded by machines that kept her body alive. A chill swept through the room. The lights flickered, and in the window appeared Ernesto's reflection, watching me in silence. No, I whispered, collapsing to my knees. Don't take the only thing I have left. But the heart monitor began to sound. The beeps sped up, then fell into one continuous drone. I screamed, crying, as I watched my mother exhale her final breath. I turned to the window. There was her silhouette, now transparent, watching me with sadness, and then walking toward the truck waiting outside. I ran after her, begging her to stay, not to go. But when I reached the cab, she was already seated in the bed, alongside all the other souls. The truck roared softly, like a satisfied sigh. The dashboard glowed once more. Eternal Guardian. I felt cold course through my blood. I knew then that I could never escape. That no matter how much I resisted, it would always take what I loved to keep me chained to it. The truck started, and my hands closed on their own over the wheel. My tears fell uncontrollably, while on the windshield a new address appeared, written in vapor. Next delivery. And I understood, with absolute horror, that the route would never end. Hope does not die. It only consumes the one who drives it.